You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, I'm answering a couple of questions from Lisa in Texas. Lisa, thank you for the question. I literally just got back from Texas. I was in Houston over the weekend, and it was an incredible experience. I've been to Texas before, but not to Houston, so it was fun to explore a new part of Texas. And it actually reminds me in a lot of ways of Florida, so it kind of felt like home. It was nice. Oh, by the way, okay, since I'm answering a question from Texas, if you all are ever in the Houston area, you have to go to the Color Factory. Maya and I went. It was one of the coolest experiences. It was so much fun. We enjoyed it so much. It has won all kinds of awards for like the best immersive experience in the country, blah, blah, blah. And I can see why. It was so much fun. If you are in the Houston area and or if you end up in Houston, check out the Color Factory. I am not an affiliate. I get nothing for this. I just really enjoyed it that much. So I just wanted to do a little public service announcement there. Color Factory was absolutely incredible. All right, so let me read you parts of Lisa's email and then we will dive into processing this. I'm considering play therapy for my 5-year-old who has ADD and struggles with aggression towards siblings and tantrums when she does not get her way. I'm realizing there are a lot of power struggles with her, and I know I should give her more choices, but I don't know how. My question is how play therapy can be beneficial for her, even though her sisters and I won't be in the room. I wouldn't expect her to have a tantrum or show aggression in the room with her CCPT, meaning play therapist, while playing. So that's the first question. There are a couple more, but I want to pause there. First of all, Lisa, I'm really thrilled that you're considering play therapy for your child. And based on what you're describing, I think it would be so helpful. And Texas is the hub of CCPT in the country. So you will find all kinds of CCPTs in Texas. That will not be difficult for you at all. I know in other states it would be a lot more difficult, but Texas is full of them. I've actually coached so many CCPTs out of Texas, so I can put you in touch with one. You just need to let me know where you are. I know Texas is big. However, when you say that you're recognizing there are a lot of power struggles and she's having tantrums and aggression and you need to provide her with choices, you already have the insight. Yes to all of those things. Everything you're describing comes back to power and control. And yes, if you provide her with choices, it will allow for her to not fight for power and control so much. So you already have that nailed down. I think you're pretty aware on that. The question about how play therapy will help, even if no one else is in the room. This is actually a very common question, and I'm really glad that you asked. It's really interesting because many parents fear that. Many parents will say, I just don't think that they're ever going to act that way with you. I don't think they would ever be aggressive. I don't think they would ever have a tantrum. I don't think they're ever going to struggle the way they do at home. Yes, they will. So there's this sense of there's a honeymoon phase with children. So the first few sessions, sometimes it lasts a little longer than a few, but in the early sessions, there's a sense of we're in the honeymoon phase and the child is on their best behavior. And they are wanting to make sure that they're liked and that they're well received and people like them and care about them and think that they're sweet and funny and all those things. But that's not congruent to who they really are, and it can't last forever. And the beauty of trusting the child and trusting the process is that your daughter knows what she struggles with. She knows she's aggressive. She knows she's power hungry. She knows that she throws tantrums. She knows that she's reactive. She will bring that into the sessions. That's what we count on in this model. Kids know their struggles and they will address them. They just have to have the environment and the relationship. So in the playroom with a play therapist, she will absolutely eventually have a tantrum. She will absolutely eventually show aggression. And we're not hoping for that, but we just know it's inevitable. It will emerge because it needs to. And so you do not need to be in the room for that to happen. And quite honestly, this is a really important component. I'm so glad that you asked this question, Lisa. Children are very protective of the people that they love. They're very protective of their parents. They're very protective of their siblings. They're very protective of people that they don't think can handle their big feelings, their big needs, their big emotions, their big behaviors. And they learn really quickly. Oh, when I do that, when I say that, when I act that way, when I respond, It makes them mad. It makes me get in trouble. It makes them sad. It makes them yell. It makes them cry. It makes them whatever. So they learn, okay, they can't handle that. That's why a child-centered play therapist is so important, because they are neutral. They're a third party who can be objective, and we don't have skin in the game. We deeply care about your child, of course. We deeply care about your family. But I'm not emotionally impacted by your child's tantrum. I'm not reactive to your child's aggression. I'm not going to be influenced by whatever your child does in the playroom. I can just provide unconditional love and acceptance for her. And knowing that they don't have to protect you is very freeing for a child. And so what I'm trying to say is, if you were in the playroom, it would actually be detrimental and potentially a hindrance, because they may not be able to do what they need to do and work on the stuff they need to work on if you're in there, because they're going to protect you from it, shield you from it, guard you. And they know that you can't handle that. I actually had a mom that saw me bring a basketball hoop, like an over-the-door basketball hoop, out of the playroom after a session with her son. And she was like, oh my gosh, did that get broken? Did you break that? And immediately launches into, the Spanish Inquisition with her son. And I looked at her and I said, things get broken. Sometimes accidents happen. We'll just screw it back in and we'll get it back up there. And because of her reaction and because of my reaction, it was very clearly contrasted. She saw it. I saw it. We both kind of sensed like, wow, Brenna's so neutral and I am so not. And we kind of had this little moment of eye contact, and she looked at me and she tilted her head sideways and she said, and this is why parents aren't allowed in the playroom, huh? And I was like, you got it. Like, high five on the insight. That's exactly why parents aren't allowed in the playroom, because parents can't handle it. And that's not a dig. That's not a criticism. It's the way that we are all wired. You are emotionally invested. You feel responsible for your children's behaviors. You would be so upset if your kid hurt me, but I get hurt a lot. Parents don't see it. Parents don't know about it, but that's part of the job. We joke all the time. All of us on our collective, our online community calls, all of us on our coaching calls, all of the therapists with whom I work all over the world, we joke all the time. I knew what I was in for. I knew what I signed up for. We joke all the time because things happen in play sessions, but parents aren't equipped to distance themselves from it. We are. That's the gift that a child-centered play therapist gives to your child and your family. We can be neutral. We can be objective. We can be removed enough that we're not influenced by stuff like that. So that will address your first question, hopefully. Let's continue with parts of the other questions. I'm trying to implement the 4 pillars and feel stuck with limit setting, as my daughters have big angry feelings and their go-to is to be aggressive with me or yell at me while I'm trying to reflect. So for example, my 3-year-old was playing with a glass salt shaker and I took it from her. She got so mad, and when I started reflecting her feelings or explaining why I took it, she yells, "Stop!" then proceeds to try and hit and scratch me. My 5-year-old has the same struggle since I just discovered the CCPT model thanks to your podcast. I'm so glad, Lisa. What do I do in the moment of their big anger and aggression toward me or a sibling so they don't hurt someone? I sometimes restrain them on my lap, but they hate that and ultimately want to run away from me because I'm the source of the frustration. If I just tell them to go to their room to calm down, they don't do that themselves. All right, so here's a really helpful rule of thumb. When a child is drowning, it's not the time to teach them to swim. So if your child is already to a point where they are completely overwhelmed emotionally, we do not want to use any skills because they can't receive it anyway. Their brain is completely checked out and they are consumed by feelings and they're big. And so the most helpful thing that you can do in that moment is to be a calm, centered, grounding presence and just be there with them in the pocket of the big feelings. So that's a really important component, is if a child is already at max capacity, they're not going to be able to hear anything that we say. So when a child is drowning, it's not the time to teach them to swim. Another helpful rule of thumb, and I don't know whether this is happening or not, Lisa, but I think it's relevant for everyone, so I'm just going to throw it in there. If you can't say it in 10 words or less, don't say it. So be really careful about over-talking, over reflecting, having long, deep conversations, trying to teach lessons, trying to impart morals, 10 words or less. They're not verbal, they're not cognitive, they're not rational. And so the more brief we can be, the more clear we can be, the better it will be received. So I think those two principles will be very helpful. As far as you took the salt shaker away, all right, I think that's probably at the root of the response. You took all of the power and control away from her, and or she felt that she was slighted. And or there's multi layers of a scenario like this often. And or you could have provided a choice there. So she's 3. She has a glass salt shaker. If she drops it, it could break. I can reason my way through all of that. I'm a mom too. I mean, granted, my son's 16, but still, I know what it's like to be around young kids. It's my whole career. 20 plus years of working with kids as young as 2. So I understand there's this could break scenario, but that might be an opportunity to trust her. That might be an opportunity to provide her with a choice, to assume good. That's glass and that could break. You're holding on to it, but it could break. You can choose to hold it really tight and not drop it, or you can choose to give it to mommy. Which do you choose? Okay, now you've not taken power away. Now she doesn't feel that it was a sense of injustice, and you've communicated that you believe that she's capable and that you trust her. That's a very different outcome. So just a thought on that scenario. And then when you started to try to reflect her feelings, she was already mad. And she got mad at you. You took it away. It's your fault. We don't have to teach our kids this. They just instinctively know it. It's your fault. All right, so you're the one to blame, Lisa. You stole the salt shaker from her. How dare you? So she's mad at you. So you reflecting her feelings at that moment, she's not going to want to hear that from you. Understandably so. When a child is drowning, it's not the time to teach them to swim. You might need to give that a beat and really kind of acknowledge that. As far as the 5-year-old, same struggle. And if there's big anger and aggression, okay, the second the behavior escalates toward aggression, you immediately go to limit setting. So I am not for hitting, in a calm but firm voice. Your tone shifts and you go straight to the limit. I am not for hitting. She is not for scratching. So-and-so is not for biting, whatever the scenario is. You're going to jump straight to the limit. Then you're going to go back through the 3 steps. You're really upset right now, but people are never for hitting. You can choose to tell me how mad you are, or you can choose to hit your pillow in your bedroom. Which do you choose? And in that scenario, we're not reflecting feelings when there's aggressive behavior. We're jumping straight to limit. Now, the first step of limit setting involves reflecting feelings, so that will get worked in, which says you're not wrong for being angry. You're not wrong for being upset. You're not wrong for wanting me to know how angry and upset you are. The behavior is what needs to be adjusted. So that's what we're teaching when we provide the 3-step for the limit. And you said, I sometimes restrain them on my lap. That's a very common practice for parents. We feel like we need to restrain and control kids so that things don't happen. In general, we want to try to set limits and let them control themselves. We need them to regulate themselves, because if we always do it for them, well, I'll just hold you and then you can't do anything. They're never learning to control their own behavior. They learn, well, I just get as out of control as I want to get, and eventually mom will hold me so that I can't hurt anyone. That's not self-control. So as much as possible, we want to give children opportunities to self-regulate themselves. And if there's any point where they do need to be held, you always have to explain why, and it has to be a choice. So you're choosing for me to hold you because you're choosing to hit. If you choose to stop hitting, you choose for me to let you go. And then it's very clear they have a choice, they have control, and more importantly, they are learning to self-regulate, because if they choose to stop hitting, they choose not to be held anymore. That's a very important component. All right, and then final question. I was wondering how to de-escalate my daughters yelling and arguing with each other in a child-centered way, other than yelling louder than them to tell them to be quiet. The age-old issue, if my kid is screaming, do I scream to be heard? All right, very common question, very common dilemma. As a general rule, another rule of thumb, We want to be a thermostat, not a thermometer. In other words, if a child is really high, if the mercury level is real high, we're not going to match them. We're going to be the thermostat that adjusts accordingly. So when a child is screaming, we don't want to scream louder. We want to actually be softer and quieter. Now, sometimes that means getting right in front of them and making direct eye contact so they can see you. Sometimes that means turning them so that they're facing you. Sometimes that means snapping or clapping to get their attention, and then gently and calmly and quietly saying, "You are not for yelling at. Neither one of you are for yelling at. Your sister's never for yelling at." Whatever limit you want to establish there. But we never want to yell, because what we're demonstrating there is escalation creates more escalation. We actually want to show them, when you get really, really hot, really, really high, really, really excited, angry, aggressive, frustrated, loud, whatever, I'm going to show you what it is like to be balanced. The thermostat. Think about the function of a thermostat. If it's too hot in a room, you can make it cooler. If it's too cold in a room, you can make it warmer. That's what we're trying to do in our parenting. We're always trying to find balance so that the child sees what regulation looks like. We're actually modeling that for them as an example. So Lisa, thank you so much for the questions. I hope that that is helpful for everyone. Those are very common scenarios that I think almost all of us face. So really helpful for us to go through that. I appreciate that. If you all would like to email me, please do. Brenna@thekidcounselor.com. I love you all. Have a good week. We'll talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.